the Queen of Heaven, the source of humanity and God, justice tempered by mercy. The Virgin Mary is no casual subject, and countless artists have tried their hands at depicting her. What makes Leonardo da Vinci's Virgin of the Rocks such a notable work? How did he take the standard subjects of such paintings and unite them through subtle, exquisite details? Professor Rosand explores the rocky setting of Leonardo's imagination and explains just what it is the artist accomplished.
Okay, the Virgin of the Rocks. This again is Leonardo is treating fairly standard, what we would call standard iconography, that is subject matter. However, with his own very, very particular take on it. There has been a long tradition of the Virgin and Child, that is, of the Virgin Mary and her child, Christ, often seen, sometimes she's seen elevated on a throne, and that's when she's celebrated as the Queen of Heaven. At other times, she is seated on the ground, and that is when she is a Madonna of humility. And these two aspects of Mary are very crucial to the religion, for one thing, but also for the painters, in the sense that she is celebrated, as I say, as Queen of Heaven, but she's also a mother. And that maternal aspect of her is crucial because she becomes the link. Her son is born to die, and he dies. At the Last Judgment, she will be the primary figure to intercede on behalf of the rest of us poor souls, pleading for that justice be tempered by mercy. She is our intercessor. But she's also the source of the humanity of God, in the sense that she becomes the vessel through which Christ is born. And again, she becomes impregnated, she gives birth, but she remains ever virgin. Now in this case, it's not that Leonardo is creating a casual picnic on the grass. For one thing, it's hardly an inviting landscape. What we have is a situation in which Mary is kneeling on the ground. She reaches out with one hand over another figure who's the lowest figure on the ground, which is the Christ child. This is God, who's on the ground. That is already it's a statement of the ultimate humility of Christ. That is the highest, that is the God, becomes the lowest. And once again, this is very much a part of the religion. They're accompanied by an angel who becomes a crucial figure. This is fairly standard in 15th century, not only 15th century, but especially 15th century Italian altarpieces. A figure who looks out at us, who establishes contact with the viewer, invites us into the painting. The angel points across the painting to another figure, another slightly larger infant. I mean, these infants are rather well proportioned and well developed. And this is the older cousin of Christ, St. John the Baptist, who is here brought into the intimacy of this setting by the Virgin herself. And this is a Leonardo invention. He invents this, he invents it know exactly where, in a particular drawing, in which he starts out with a Madonna nursing the child. And it's that she nurses the child. I mean, this goes back to the 14th century. That's the ultimate human aspect of Mary. I mean, that as mother who gives, who nourishes the human God. The young John, of course, and when he's older, he will be out in the desert for 40 years, and he will come back to preach the coming of Christ. He will be the first, he will baptize Christ, thereby establishing baptism as one of the sacraments of the church. What is so interesting with Leonardo is that once again, he takes these disparate figures and he brings them into a single group. He gives them a great unity. This is an aspect of this art that, once again, that Vasari in the middle of the 16th century recognized, to take the disparate units of various figures and to give them a single unitary form. And in this case, it's the spreading mantle of the Virgin Mary, carried by her arm as she reaches out to take John by the shoulder and bring him into the group. But he is an outsider. He is there, he's coming in from outside, she's welcoming him, bringing him in. He greets his cousin, who turns to him to give him a sign of benediction. And the angel who looks out at us points right directly across to John, so that there's a circuit of relationships here. Just as there is a circuit, an axis of emphasis here above Christ, the head of Christ, the angel's hand, and then ultimately the hand of the Virgin above. Well, Christ's gesture with the two fingers raised is the gesture of benediction. This is a gesture that of blessing, of blessing. This is the gesture that saints will use when they, as it were, acting on behalf of Christ, will use. This is what the Pope uses when he blesses a crowd. The angel, on the other hand, is there as a kind of indicator, quite literally, pointing across to John, and I mean that itself establishing reinforcing the axis from here to here, from the let's just say the visitor or interloper across here. Whereas the hand of Mary is a hand also of blessing. I mean, it's a hand that is right above her child. It's the kind of hand that would come down on the head of the child softly. So that what we have here are various gestures that belong to different figures, and yet they are knit together by Leonardo so that the entire, all of the figures move. That is, move in the sense that they create this kind of unity. There's one other aspect of Leonardo that's important as a painter, and it has to do with all of this. And it's what is generally referred to as sfumato, which means basically a smokiness. What Leonardo declares, I mean, just to go back to his own writings, there are no outlines in nature. The idea that somehow you draw an outline around the face, that's an artificial convention, because there is no such outline, just as there's no horizon. If the face moves or if the viewing eye moves, the line moves. It's a continuity there. And what he does is to create this sfumato effect, that is both around the edges of the face, but also within the face itself. What he does is to soften the line. And toward the end of his career, at the end of his late art, the shadow becomes so dark that you can hardly see any lines. It is the very notion of, in a sense, the painter trying to liberate himself from the limits of his own art, because he has to do it with line. It has to be there. He has to have that structure, and yet, I mean, even here, I mean, around the face of the angel, but all of these faces, there's a softening. I mean, this is in the 1480s, so it's not as radical as it will be several decades later. But the most striking aspect of the painting, of course, is what gives it its modern title, The Virgin of the Rocks. This is a kind of landscape that is very much Leonardo's own, in the sense that he takes what had been for some of his predecessors fantasy landscapes, not so much related to the Virgin, but for example, when images of Saint Jerome in the wilderness or in the desert, there are certain kinds of fantastic rock formations. But for Leonardo, fantasy is based upon reality. And once again, Leonardo, he's not only the great painter, not only a mathematician, he's also a geologist. He studies the earth. He recognizes that the earth itself is not merely something that was finished on the sixth day of creation and then God rested, but that the earth itself carries all of the traces of being in constant motion. But what about that landscape, these fantastic rocks? What are they there just because Leonardo thought of himself as a geologist and this is the kind of landscape he wanted to paint? Or do they carry any kind of symbolic meaning? Now, in asking the question, I obviously am assuming a certain kind of answer, although the answer can't be absolute. The rocks are there. They carry all sorts of interesting implications, that is, in terms of their openings, their penetration, and so forth. And needless to say, Freudian interpretations of Leonardo begin with Freud, and quite legitimately so. But in this case, I mean, there are other possibilities, and they're not mutually exclusive. The Virgin Mary herself, over time, acquires all sorts of symbolic epithets. She has all sorts of values. She's compared to all sorts of things. She is compared to the rocks. She's compared to the mountains, especially. And through that comparison, she is declared to be essentially greater than they are, but also older than they. Because in the liturgy, once again, one must go back to the religion. In the liturgy, Mary is declared to be present from the very beginning. For Leonardo, these rocks basically represent, in one way or another, represent the record of the passage of time. And in this, they represent the mortality of the earth. And to set the Virgin against that, of course, is to, not of course, but is to suggest a clear contrast. And this is how a painter like Leonardo would think. No theologian would have the imagination to say, look, I mean, why don't you put rocks there because she's older than the rocks and so forth. So this is where painters become extremely, not just knowledgeable, but they are the ones who imagine. They are the ones who imagine the possibilities of giving a pictorial form to this particular culture, this particular religious culture. And it's one of the great achievements of Leonardo.